Thank you very much, Mr. Brady, for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your comments and remarks at this morning's breakfast. One thing you spoke to us about was the uncertainty in terms of the outcome of the next general election. If we are looking at a potential coalition or a minority government, what say do you think the backbench Conservative MPs will have in that matter?
Well, obviously we're working hard to try to make sure that it's not an uncertain result and that things are as clear and simple as possible. If the polls were right and if there's no change during the course of the campaign, then obviously we have to look at all of the possibilities as to whether there might be a viable coalition or a viable minority government. I think that the Conservative Party will get the biggest share of the votes and the biggest number of seats, and I hope that we will get an overall majority. So in any of the circumstances short of an overall majority, I think it's essential that colleagues would be fully involved both in discussions about what the sensible way forward is, and if there were to be a viable coalition and a proposal put for that, then I think colleagues would also expect to vote on it.
The Prime Minister has committed the UK to having a referendum on Britain's membership of the EU in 2017. What is the likelihood of that happening if there is a minority government or a coalition government?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to get some meaningful renegotiation of the relationship between Britain and the European Union. I think the centre of gravity in this country is very much that we're interested in the trading relationship and proper open access to markets, and not really interested in the political superstructure of the EU. So what I think most of us would like to see is a serious renegotiation. But I think also we recognise, and I hope the other parties will come to recognise too, this is one of the biggest questions for the British people about how we govern ourselves and what kind of country we're going to be into the future. So it's absolutely right that after a serious effort at effecting change, people should have the ultimate say on whether we remain in or whether we leave and seek to negotiate a different status.
You spoke about the need to reform our political institutions. There have been a lot of developments in the course of this Parliament in terms of rebalancing the power between Parliament and the Executive. What further steps do you think can be taken in the next Parliament?
Well, I'm very radical on this, and I would ultimately like to see a full separation between the executive and the legislature. I think that would improve our Parliament, would give it a clarity of purpose, and would make sure that people would know what they were voting for, and it would remove the patronage that party leaders have, which sometimes influences members of Parliament perhaps a little bit too much in how they vote and the positions they adopt. But short of a full separation between the legislature and the executive, there's an enormous amount more that could be done. The coalition agreement foresaw the creation of a House Business Committee, so the House of Commons would decide its whole timetable, for instance. I think that would be a very big step forward. Sadly, it's something that hasn't been done by the coalition government. I think the select committees are probably the greatest success of Parliament at the moment, and the thing that the public quite likes when it sees the select committees in operation, and likes the fact that the election of select committee chairs and members has enhanced their status. So let's take that further. Let's give the select committees more powers. Let's give them more resources as well to make sure that they really can scrutinise what government departments are doing. Get into the detail, even get into the budgets and the way in which government departments are spending their money. If you compare our committees to congressional committees in the United States, they have so much more firepower and they approach government on a much more equal footing, and I would like to see our Parliament able to do the same.